Imagine this. You're scrolling late at night, the room is dark, and your phone buzzes with a notification. It looks harmless, just a random text message. But what if that single message was the key to bringing down some of the biggest tech companies in the world? What if behind that text sat a group of teenagers plotting one of the most daring cyber heists in modern history? Tonight, we uncover the chilling rise and shocking fall of LAPSUS, the teenage hackers who shook the digital world to its core. This isn't just a story about computers, codes, and firewalls. It's a story about greed, ambition, betrayal, and the unsettling truth that some of the most dangerous cybercriminals weren't seasoned masterminds hiding in shadows. They were high school kids still living under their parents' roofs, and the way they exploited their targets will leave you questioning how safe your digital life really is. The LAPSUS saga began quietly, almost like an urban legend whispered in the corners of online forums. A group of teenagers spread across the UK, Brazil, and a handful of other countries were united not by age or geography, but by one dangerous skill: the ability to break into systems thought to be impenetrable. Microsoft, Samsung, NVIDIA, Uber, names that symbolize power and security, became their playground. What made this group so terrifying wasn't just their targets, it was their recklessness. Unlike traditional hacker groups who stay hidden, LAPSUS craved attention. They flaunted their hacks on Telegram, bragged about stealing source codes, and even posted polls asking followers which company they should breach next. For them, cybercrime wasn't just business, it was entertainment. At the heart of their chaos was a teenager known only by his online alias, White. Barely old enough to drive a car, he allegedly led some of the most devastating breaches of the decade. Investigators later revealed he operated from a modest bedroom, armed with little more than a laptop, an internet connection, and a dangerous amount of arrogance. His age made him unpredictable, and unpredictability made him powerful. But how did they do it? These weren't sophisticated hackers writing advanced malware or creating zero-day exploits. Their weapon of choice was something far simpler and far more terrifying: social engineering. They tricked employees, manipulated weak passwords, and used SIM swapping to hijack identities. And the scariest part? It worked again and again. What started as a few online pranks quickly spiraled into a global crisis. Billion-dollar companies scrambled to protect their secrets. Governments took notice, and the digital world held its breath as LAPSUS grew bolder with every attack. This is where the nightmare truly begins. As the group grew in confidence, so did their ambition. What started as pranks soon escalated into a wave of digital chaos. In early 2022, headlines around the world began reporting something unthinkable. Global tech giant companies that spend billions on cybersecurity were being brought to their knees by teenagers. Microsoft, the company behind Windows, powering hundreds of millions of computers worldwide. In a shocking breach, LAPSUS claimed to have stolen source code for Bing and Cortana. They didn't quietly sell it on the dark web. They posted screenshots online, mocking Microsoft's security team. For a company that symbolized technological strength, this was humiliation. Then came NVIDIA, one of the most powerful chip makers in the world. Their graphics cards fuel everything from gaming to artificial intelligence. LAPSUS not only infiltrated their systems, but they also stole nearly 1 terabyte of sensitive data. What's more shocking, they demanded that NVIDIA remove restrictions on their GPUs so people could use them for cryptocurrency mining. It wasn't just about money, it was about power, control, and showing the world they could bend giants to their will. And then Samsung, the tech giant that defines innovation in smartphones and consumer electronics. In March 2022, Samsung confirmed that hackers had stolen nearly 200 gigabytes of confidential data. This included source code related to Galaxy devices. Once again, LAPSUS didn't hide in the shadows. They posted samples of the stolen data publicly, daring Samsung to stop them. How did they pull this off? Their methods were were shockingly simple. Instead of building custom malware or using elite exploits, they focused on people, the weakest link in security. They used social engineering, manipulating employees into giving away login details. They used SIM swapping, tricking mobile carriers into handing over control of phone numbers. Once they had access, they bypassed two-factor authentication, giving them the keys to the entire system. It was a digital version of breaking into a fortress, not by smashing the gate, but by convincing the guard to open the door. What made them even more dangerous was their boldness. Unlike secretive hacker groups, LAPSUS bragged about their successes on Telegram. They posted polls asking their followers, "Which company should we hack next?" Thousands of people watched in real time as billion-dollar companies were voted on like reality TV contestants. For LAPSUS, cybercrime wasn't just an operation, it was a performance. Uber was another victim. In September 2022, an 18-year-old hacker claimed responsibility for breaching Uber's internal systems. He reportedly gained access to Slack, the company's internal messaging app, and announced himself with a chilling message: "I am a hacker and Uber has suffered a data breach." Screenshots showed employees stunned, unsure if it was a prank or a nightmare unfolding before their eyes. Each hack sent shockwaves through the corporate world. These weren't small businesses. These were titans of technology, with some of the most advanced security infrastructures on the planet. And yet, teenagers, some of them still attending classes during the day, were breaching their defenses by night. Panic spread across industries. Companies scrambled to secure their systems. Emergency board meetings were held. Shareholders demanded answers. Cybersecurity experts were left asking if Microsoft, NVIDIA, Samsung, and Uber weren't safe, who was? But perhaps the most disturbing part of this story was the sheer recklessness of the group. They weren't motivated by stealth or caution. They sought fame, recognition, and chaos. They wanted their names in headlines, their hacks in the spotlight, and with every breach, their confidence soared higher. They believed they were untouchable, but in their arrogance, they made mistakes. They left digital fingerprints, traces that investigators were quietly collecting. The very fame they craved would soon lead to their downfall, and when law enforcement finally struck back, the world would discover just how young and just how shockingly unprepared these so-called masterminds really were. By now, LAPSUS $ had become a household name in the tech world. News outlets couldn't stop covering their daring hack. Telegram channels tracked their every move, and inside law enforcement agencies across the globe, alarms were blaring. It was no longer about embarrassment for big companies. This was a matter of national security. The FBI in the United States, the National Crime Agency in the UK, Interpol, and cybercrime units in Brazil. Everyone wanted answers. Who were these people? How could teenagers, operating from bedrooms and internet cafes, bypass billion-dollar defenses? And, perhaps the most chilling question, what would they do next? The investigation was anything but easy. LAPSUS operated differently than most cybercriminal groups. They weren't hiding in the dark web, encrypting their messages, or covering their tracks with layers of proxy. No, they flaunted their crimes in public. Telegram became their stage, where they taunted companies and bragged about stolen data. But arrogance is a weakness. Investigators began quietly watching. They tracked username, timestamps, and even grammar patterns in messages. Digital forensics experts compared screenshots, metadata, and server logs. Slowly, a clearer picture began to form. Behind the flashy posts and bold threats, there were real teenagers making careless mistakes. One of the biggest breaks came when analysts noticed unusual login activity tied to specific regions in the UK and Brazil. SIM swapping incidents also left trails. Mobile carriers kept records, and investigators were able to match those records to suspicious individuals. Piece by piece, the puzzle came together. The shocking revelation: the alleged leader of LAPSUS, known by the alias White, wasn't a seasoned criminal mastermind. He was a 16-year-old boy living in Oxford, England. Reports later described him as an intelligent but troubled teenager, someone who had already been investigated before for hacking. But this time, the scale was unimaginable. While the media portrayed LAPSUS as unstoppable cyber geniuses, investigators saw something else: children playing with fire. But fire spreads, and the longer they operated, the more dangerous the situation became. Each new hack brought fresh victims, and each new taunt made law enforcement more determined to shut them down. Behind closed doors, cybercrime units coordinated across continents. Evidence was exchanged, surveillance was intensified, and pressure mounted. It was only a matter of time before the digital chase turned into real-world arrest. The world watched in suspense as rumors of imminent crackdowns spread. Who would be caught first? Would they slip away into the shadows of the internet, or would the arrogance that made them famous finally seal their fate? The answer came suddenly and dramatically when law enforcement finally struck. March 2022. After months of digital cat and mouse, law enforcement finally moved in. In the early hours of the morning, the quiet streets of Oxford were broken by flashing blue lights. A team of officers approached a suburban home, not the lair of an international criminal mastermind, but the modest house of a teenage boy. The door was forced open. Inside, the messy bedroom looked just like any teenager's. Posters on the wall, empty snack wrappers on the desk, and a glowing laptop still connected to chat groups. Except this wasn't just any teenager. According to investigators, this was the alleged ringleader of LAPSUS, the boy who had humiliated Microsoft, Samsung, and NVIDIA from the comfort of his room. The teenager was placed in handcuffs as stunned parents looked on. Within hours, more arrests followed across the UK and Brazil. Police seized laptops, hard drives, SIM cards, and even cryptocurrency wallets believed to contain stolen funds. In total, at least 7 teenagers, aged between 16 and 21, were linked to the group. For the first time, the anonymous faces behind the screen had names, homes, and consequences, and the world was shocked. These weren't elite cyber warriors operating in hidden bunkers. They were kids who had skipped classes, lied to their parents, and used their free time to wage war against billion-dollar companies. The arrests were only the beginning. Next came the trials, and with them, a media storm. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered in droves, shoving microphones at police officers and lawyers. Cameras flashed as headlines screamed, "Teenage hackers brought down global tech giant." Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense. On one side sat the prosecution, armed with mountains of digital evidence, chat logs, screenshots, IP traces, and seized devices. On the other side, nervous teenagers with their lawyers, trying to appear calm but visibly shaken. Some avoided eye contact, others stared at the floor, as if reality had finally caught up with them. The prosecutors painted LAPSUS as reckless cybercriminals who had endangered global security. They described how simple tricks, like phishing emails and SIM swaps, were used to breach world-leading companies. They argued that the hackers had caused financial losses in the millions, not to mention damage to reputation and public trust. Defense lawyers pushed back, highlighting the youth of the accused. They argued that their clients were children, too immature to grasp the scale of their action. Some even suggested that the teenagers had been manipulated by unseen figures, older, more experienced criminals who had pulled the strings from behind the scenes. But the evidence was overwhelming. Screenshots of stolen data, Telegram conversations where the hackers bragged about their conquest, and even selfies taken during their operations were shown in court. It was impossible to ignore the recklessness. When the verdicts were announced, the consequences were mixed. Some members of LAPSUS were sentenced to youth detention, while others received suspended sentences with strict monitoring conditions. The courts recognized their age, but also made it clear their actions had consequences. The public reaction was divided. Some saw the teenagers as dangerous criminals who had gotten off lightly. Others viewed them as troubled kids who had made terrible choices but didn't deserve to have their lives destroyed. But one thing was certain: this case had exposed just how vulnerable even the biggest companies could be. As the courtroom doors closed and the reporters dispersed, the story of LAPSUS dollar was far from over. The arrests had answered some questions, but left many more. Who else had been involved? Were the teenagers really acting alone? And most important, would copycats rise to take their place? The aftermath of LAPSUS dollar would prove just as haunting as the crimes themselves. The arrests may have ended LAPSUS dollar sign as an active threat, but the aftermath left scars that could not be erased. The damage was already done. Companies that once stood as fortresses of technology had been exposed as vulnerable, their secrets stolen, and their reputations shaken. Microsoft spent months investigating and repairing the damage. NVIDIA had to tighten systems and address the fallout of stolen source code. Samsung was forced to reassure customers that their devices remained pure. Uber, still reeling from previous scandals, now had to explain how an 8-year-old had waltzed into its internal systems with shocking ease. Financial impact ran into the millions. Money wasn't the only cause for employee trust had been broken. Imagine going to work day one of the hacker who embarrassed your company was still out there, waiting to strike again. The psychological toll was immense. LAPSUS dollar sign was a wake-up call. Teenagers could billion-dollar corporation. What did that for national power, cost, or transnet threat larger than one group? But perhaps the most unsettling part of the LAPSUS dollar story was the unanswered questions. Court documents suggested that the teenagers may not have been working entirely alone. Some investigators believed older, more experienced hackers could have been pulling the strings while staying hidden in the shadows. And then there were the missing funds. Reports hinted at cryptocurrency wallets connected to the group, but much of the money vanished without a trace. Who controlled it? Where did it go? Even today, those questions remain unresolved. The group's Telegram channel went silent after the arrest, but whispers in dark corners of the internet suggested that not everyone had been caught. Some accounts believed splinter cells might still be active, waiting for the right time to re-emerge. For cybersecurity experts, the lesson was chilling. It wasn't advanced code or secret exploits that brought giants to their knees. It was simple manipulation. A phone call here, a fake login page there, a SIM card swapped in the dead of night. The message was clear. The greatest threat to security wasn't technology, it was people. The story of LAPSUS dollar became more than a case study in hacking. It became a warning that in a world so deeply connected, no system is truly safe, and that sometimes the most dangerous threats aren't shadowy figures hiding in bunkers, but teenagers with time, talent, and the desire to cause chaos. As the dust settled, the world was left with a haunting realization. If children could shake the foundations of global tech companies, what would happen if real professionals decided to do the same? LAPSUS dollar sign may have been stopped, but the digital war was only just beginning. The story of LAPSUS dollar sign is unlike anything we've seen before. A group of teenagers, armed not with guns or armies, but with laptops and cell phones, managed to rattle some of the most powerful companies in the world. They exposed a terrifying truth that age, location, and resources no longer find power in the digital age. Knowledge does. In the end, arrests were made. Courtrooms saw justice served. But justice, in this case, felt incomplete. Millions of dollars were lost, secrets were stolen, and the unanswered questions about who else may have been involved and what happened to the missing funds still linger. Perhaps the most chilling part, this wasn't a one-time story. The same vulnerabilities that LAPSUS dollar exploited still exist today. Social engineering, SIM swapping, human error. These cracks in the system remain, waiting for the next group bold enough to exploit them. If teenagers could do this, what about organized criminal or state-sponsored hackers with limitless resources? The world is more connected than ever before, but with every connection comes risk, and the LAPSUS LAPSUS saga is a stark reminder that in cyberspace, even giant can fall. The digital battlefield isn't fought with bombs and bullets, but with passwords, logins, and human trust. And in that war, we are all vulnerable. So the next time you receive a strange text message or a suspicious email, remember this story. Because for LAPSUS dollar, it all began with something small, just a SIM card, just a password, just a moment of weakness. And from there, they brought billion-dollar empires to their knees. The arrests ended one chapter, but the question remained, was this the end or only the beginning of something far darker?